Are your Miata's windshield wipers really slow? I don't think that's safe. Let's see if we can do something about that. Alright, first let's clean up some electrical connections and see if that improves anything. First we are going to unbolt this little ground wire here, clean up the lug and terminal, and surface if we can, and then we can also pull out the plug for the wiper motor and try to clean up what you can in there with a wire brush. If you have any electrical parts cleaner spray, you can try that as well. So let's see how that goes. Alright, so after using a 10mm socket on this little bolt here, we are left with a kind of sleeve there at the bottom of it, if you can see. So now let's see if I can figure out how to get that off. Alright, I used a pair of vice grips to hold the little sleeve on the bottom, then used the 10mm to kind of unscrew the bolt from that, and it worked. So let's continue. Once you get the metal sleeve off, you can kind of pull things apart a little bit and see the order. There's a big washer on the bottom, then the ground connector, and then two little washers above that. So my ground connector doesn't actually look very bad at all, but I'm still going to clean it up with the wire brush and just make sure I can get it as clean as I can. So if you couldn't already tell, cleaning off the terminals there on the motor and in the harness connector there is going to be difficult. You can, if you don't have the right tools, you can futz around with some sandpaper, which will probably be pretty frustrating. I am going to use my little wire brush attachment on my Dremel there and speed things up a bit. And then I'm probably also going to use some of this stuff here just to see if it helps. So I'm going to do that now. If all else fails and you don't have sandpaper or a Dremel or that electrical parts cleaner spray, you can just go ahead and disconnect and reconnect this plug here 10 times. That can kind of self-clean up the contacts on it just by you pulling it on and off a bunch of times. So there's always that if you don't have any of the other stuff. So I made the ground little connector here nice and shiny. I cleaned up in there as best I could with the Dremel wire brush attachment and the spray, and then I sprayed here. Not sure how much it did, but probably didn't hurt. Obviously, make sure you read the instructions and let everything dry before putting any electricity through it. Let's see what else we can do. Even though it might not be directly related to the wiper motor, I'm going to go ahead and clean up the little, there we go, that little white ground junction box down there underneath the brake booster and the clutch master cylinder if you are lucky enough to have one. So let's pop that open and see what we can do about it. I should probably note that I have a fair amount of tools, and the only thing that would reach that little bolt down there is a 10mm wrench from over there. So all my sockets and things like that were too tall, so don't even bother. So just like that bolt holding everything in, that little white guy there that kind of holds the wires in place was also extremely difficult to access, and I just ended up having to cut it because I couldn't pry it out because there's no access. So good luck with that. Alright, so once you pop that top cover open, you will be able to kind of pry out the kind of ground tab that spans the 5 wires, and that looks like this. So once again, get your wire brush out, sandpaper, whatever, and make that guy nice and shiny. And let's see how that turns out. Just want to point out that this thing is pretty grody looking. Not a great idea by Mazda to put this ground down in an area that's, you know, pretty frequently wet. So yeah, there's some cleanup to do here. Alright, so clean that guy up pretty good with the with my Dremel tool, all 5 of the tabs and the main ground one on both sides. Let's see if we can find a better place for this thing where it won't be covered in water all the time. So I think I found where I'm going to ground to instead of going underneath that mess again, and it is that guy right there. I've already taken the cover off there just so you can see better and so I can maybe have better access if the camera will focus, but yeah, that guy right there in the center of the shot. Yeah, let's try that guy. So I removed the other 10mm bolt there on the right, holding that bracket in place. So you can see both bolt holes there. I'm going to be using that one further over on the left, back there. Well, I got access, I'm probably going to chase the threads. It's an M6 by 1.0 if you got a tap for it. Chase it because most of the ground current, whatever I guess, is going to be going through the threads. So clean them up, and I may even grind down some of the paint off the surface just to give whatever the current another path to go through, I guess. Don't know what I'm talking about, not an electrical engineer. Try at your own risk. Alright, so used a grinding wheel on my Dremel. Come on, focus past there. You can see if it'll ever stay in focus. Ground off some of the paint there. And now I am trying to chase the threads a little bit, but of course there's limited access. So I'm using some vice grips on the end of my tap there to do what I can. And don't forget to wire wheel your bolts for the bracket, because one of them is going to be a ground bolt. So clean them up real good. Alright, so this is how it turned out. That guy is on that guy. All metal surfaces were cleaned up. Threads were chased, whatever you're going to do. And so now that ground, for one thing, is a whole lot easier to get to if you need to get to it, because it's not under the brake booster. And it's also out of the way of a lot of water. It's not going to be sitting in standing water. So I think that's quite a bit of an improvement there. Let's see if the car agrees. Alright, moment of truth. Let's see what happens to the wipers after we clean up all those electrical and ground connections. Not a big improvement. Since the electrical connector cleanup didn't really seem to improve things, I'm going to move on to stage 2, which is cleaning up and lubricating the, I don't know what they're called, hinge points under for each wiper arm. So pop off the black covers. My car is already missing that one. And then the 12mm nuts, and then the arms should kind of wiggle off. So let's do that. With the arms off, go and start popping off those circular covers and get that whole trim piece off, and then for good measure go and get that one off as well. So at least on my car, just snapping these things off doesn't just like happen. The two one on each side on the outside. The wider ones, those are a little bit easier to get a screwdriver under and kind of pry them off. These smaller circular ones here in the center are so tight on there, I couldn't really get a screwdriver on there or under there using conventional measures. So I'll just show you what I did if I can. Basically, I'm using a tiny little, screwdriver thing and a little hammer, and I'm just brute forcing these things out of here. And you should probably just plan on replacing them if you like things to look nice, because they'll probably get mangled in one way or another. So here's what I did. And good luck finding that. Just a tool tip. For some of these screws, like this one in the back corner, I'm probably going to need a little right angle screwdriver like that to get under the hood. So heads up. Alright, with everything off, all the plastic covers off, let's go ahead and remove the two 10mm bolts for each pivot point for the wiper arms. And then the last thing you need to get off to remove the linkage is this last 10mm nut here. Where the linkage connects to the motor. So, pretty important thing to note here. Loosen up that 12mm nut, but do not remove it. And before that, or after, as long as you don't disconnect anything else, make sure you put some sort of paint mark on this guy here, and then I guess also on the rubber bushing or whatever in there. So when you reassemble stuff, you can reassemble stuff in its current alignment, which should save some headaches. So once the nut is loosened but not removed, and you got your paint marks on, I found that some prying with a pry bar was able to pop this guy off. It is a splined shaft, so it shouldn't be impossible to remove. Just be patient and try not to bend the sheet metal here because it is pretty thin. So with this thing popped off, you can then remove the nut and remove the linkage from the car. With the linkage off the car, you can then kind of check the whatever these guys are to see how sticky they are. Mine spin freely, they're not binding or anything. I don't actually know if this is normal or if they would be a little freer with some fresh lubrication in there, maybe clean them up a bit. So I'm going to disassemble them, re-grease stuff, and see if it helps. So for the next step to work, you're going to have to compress these two things together because there is a, let's see if I can get it, there is a tiny little circlip down there right above that washer there that needs to come out before you can go any further, and you need to take the pressure off of it, hence the compression of these things here. Get creative. Bench vise, I was lucky enough to find these at a junkyard a while ago. But find a way to compress it and then pop that circlip off. Well, that was very unpleasant getting that out. Eventually did with some variety of tiny little screwdrivers and picks and stuff. So that side is out. Underneath all of that, before you can get the rest of it out, is that rubber O-ring there. So what I was doing is kind of pulling up on this to get some space between it and the O-ring, and then I should be able to pry the O-ring out. So either my wiper linkage has already been replaced, or it's just the most mint condition one that's 25 years old that, you know, it's probably out there. This thing is mint. Like, I did not clean this up. This is just what it looks like. So all I can do is slap some fresh grease in there. I'll probably either use some Silglide or some Shin-Etsu stuff. So, you know, I guess I'll put some fresh stuff in there, see if there's any improvement. If there is, I'll do the other side. If there's no improvement, then I'm just going to ignore the other side and move on. Alright, so decided to go with the Shin-Etsu silicone grease. And so there would be no doubt I just slathered it all over that thing. So let's see how it goes. I ended up doing the second one because even though the first one looked really great and the metal wasn't pitted and there was still some grease in there, cleaning out that grease and refilling it with the Shin-Etsu stuff did seem to make an improvement. So I thought it was worth the time. And since I'm in here anyways, I did the second one. And they both feel better. It's not a night and day difference, but I think every little bit helps in this system. So let's move on to something else. The last step in the process, hopefully, is removing the wiper motor. That should be 3 10mm nuts and or bolts. Yeah, they're a bunch of bolts. 3 10mm bolts. Pop that off. Remove the electrical connector clip, and let's have a look. So I just misspoke. There were actually 4 bolts for the motor. One was hidden underneath, and you kind of go at it blind, and eventually you'll get it. So next thing we're going to do is take off the 3, I think, if I'm counting this correctly, little Phillips head screws holding the plastic cover on. So let's get that off. So with the cover off, you know, I've never actually done this before. I'm not sure what is, you know, it's supposed to look like in here, but I see a lot of some pretty gross looking grease all over the place here. And since those 2 little things there look like, you know, electrical contacts, you know, I'm thinking I can probably, oh wait, there's a third. So let's clean all this up here because this is pretty gross. So, you know, came this far, why stop here? Pulled off the rear kind of brass looking, not actually brass, cover there, 3 10mm bolts. Then came around to the shaft here, kind of pry off that, I don't know, kind of wave washer thing. You know, using a flathead screwdriver, work your way around, pry that up. And now I think, well, let's see what happens. I'm not going to do this while holding the camera. Let's see how this goes. Alright, so that wasn't so bad. Use a little hammer to tap the shaft out or up. Make sure you put a nut on here when you're tapping it out so you don't damage the threads. Just kind of keep tapping it until it comes out. Make sure you don't lose track of that, or the 2 little wave washer things that are, well, whatever, they were down here on the shaft on the bottom side here. So now you can get a good look at all of the very, very crusty grease all over the housing and the spring, and it's pretty gross. So now I think I'm gonna get as much out as I can with the screwdriver. And then it's probably going to be time to just break out the brake clean, hose everything down, and then I'm going to basically try to, I guess, replicate this amount of grease, but once again I'll be using that Shin-Etsu stuff. Also, of course, clean that up, clean the contacts, all that fun stuff. I guess we are rebuilding a wiper motor today, so let's do that. So things are coming along after half a can of brake clean or something. Things are looking pretty clean. Cleaned off this whatever metal contact surface here with the whatever wire brush attachments for my Dremel. Made that all shiny. Same thing on the 3 contact pins here. Cleaned those up. And I am now in the process of using the paper towel to clean out the shaft. Want to make sure I get all traces of brake clean out of here before I re-grease stuff. But as you can see, things are looking pretty awesome in there. I think I can safely say this was the far and away the primary cause of the slow wipers. So I'm anxious to put stuff back together. So let's get going. So here's where we stand before reassembly. Pack that whole rotating spring looking thing that moves the gear full of that Shin-Etsu grease. So that is in there, very nice. Then I put some of the grease on the shaft and on the football washer thing, and even in the teeth of the gear, even though it's probably not necessary given how much is in there. Then I put a little on the contact place where the football washer rests, and even inside that housing. So let's put stuff together and try to do it in the right order. Alright folks, moment of truth. Did all this work pay off? Oh, that's really not so good, huh? So, okay. So, as we saw, the arm shaft guy here was not in alignment with the shaft from the motor. So when the motor was kind of ready and done with the cycle and it was putting the wipers back down, it was trying to put the wipers like in here instead of, you know, up here where they're supposed to be. So I had an idea of how to do this without removing the wipers and putting them back on and all that fun stuff. And that is to just put some zip ties on those guys there to represent the wipers. And, you know, the first time, obviously, they were out of sync. But then I played around with the connection of the wiper arm to the motor. And now, kind of hard to see, but they appear to basically be doing what you, oh my god, forgive the noise. Most importantly, when I turn the wipers off, they finish in the down position, more or less. So I think we're good to reinstall. So that's how I troubleshot the problem I had before. Alright, round 2. Let's see if this is any better. Oh yeah, people. Now, need to bring them up a little bit. That's not nearly a full sweep. But man, that is fast. Now it's kind of dry, but that works for me. So, how did the adjustment do? It's not a full sweep. Actually, I looked at it before, and it's just barely touching the rubber strip right here at the top. I am new enough to Miatas that I don't actually know if this is normal or not. but the down position looks good. I don't love this, but that's probably just because of the soapy stuff I'm using, but maybe not. I don't know. I can fine-tune the heights of the blades, but that is a giant improvement in wiper speed. So mission accomplished here.